Welcome back to another tier list update. We're going to be covering rocket launchers again because new weapon has come to the game. You know, sometimes that happens, gives us a conversation. Sometimes I reuse old weapons we thought we were bad, and it gives me some new insights. So typically in these updated tier lists, I like to refer back to the old lists, see where I was at, and kind of compare and contrast. This time, I'm going to go blind. I'm not going to refer back to that because a lot of my standings didn't change that much, but some of them definitely did, and I have a lot more to say about that, and I'm just going to see where I get on this, and then we'll compare at the very end. So first and foremost, S tier is super serious to me. That is like the best weapon in the entire game in its class, or weapons that can generally do it all. I try to put very few items in S tier. I respect it pretty heavily. And then there's no F tier. So none of these launchers are super terrible, completely unusable. Even that noble launcher, I know you're thinking it. These weapons are almost always generally viable and typically very, very good, as rocket launchers are, if you haven't seen my top 10 weapons video, are pretty much the S tier weapons of Save the World. So let's just start off with the bazooka. Easy A tier. Bazooka and the trash cannon. Trash cannon is just a more cost-effective version. They have the exact same stats other than their cost and durability. So the trash cannon is just a better version. And both of these weapons are base game, which doesn't always factor into my opinion, but the fact that you can get these weapons from normal missions, from llamas pretty easily without vouchers or flocks or events, and they're actually really, really strong. I've seen the Fortnite DB range weapon tier list, just like the rank of base damage, and these launchers are unironically very strong. I'm not just putting it up here because they're base game, they are actually very good. In fact, the Dam Buster is kind of up there. So Dam Buster is sort of better or worse depending on how you use it. I believe it does more damage. I can't remember exactly, but it does at least knock enemies around. So there's a ton of utility with that. I know that endurance players would put this in S tier because it's just required to get smashers and mini bosses out of the way. I don't know if it knocks back mini bosses, but at least smashers, and it's really, really good. It has a hidden value, so knockback does not actually show on a weapon stats sheet. If you go to a weapon like the V6 launcher, you are not going to see anything other than impact. In fact, there is a final tier all the way down here that it does not show called knockback, and the Dam Buster is like the highest in the game. It really moves enemies around. And another notable one is the Sod Buster down here. It has quadruple impact perks, which can be really fun, but it won't send the enemies flying. So Dam Buster has a lot of utility and a lot of damage. That puts it in A tier. In fact, even the purple Dam Buster actually shows on like the top 10 list there. Sorry for the alerts. I am recording this on stream, so usually I'd say Twitch link down below, but this series of videos I'm recording on YouTube today because Twitch is not working. So yeah. Bowler, another A tier weapon. In fact, I'm going to put the Jabberwocky right next to it because they're very similar. The Bowler shoots a cannonball that bounces around, clunks around. I made a bunch of videos on it. Super, super fun weapon. The Jabberwocky doesn't bounce quite as far, but it explodes into 4 more projectiles, essentially quadrupling its damage. They're not the same weapon, but their playstyle is similar enough to talk about them at the same time. Huge damage, super fun, a little weird to use. That's why I'm going to put it lower A tier. It's not for everybody, but the damage is there. I have a video on hand. This is just a thing I do as a YouTuber. Completely finished, thumbnail is done, and everything, showcasing a Jabberwocky doing 10 million damage. This is just like an unpublished video on my computer. I am saving this for when the Jabberwocky comes around the weekly shop, but it literally does 10 million damage in one explosion if you crit. It's super strong, super fun. Now, I do know this from the last tier list. I believe I ranked the Cannonade and the V6 launcher very highly. In fact, in my example, you can see that I have the V6 launcher supercharged, same as the Cannonade. So you know that I am biased when I say that these weapons are not as good as I used to think. I have tried them. I'm gonna again do these at the same time because they're both fully auto rockets that have a mag size of 6 and 8 here, and they're really good, you know, single target, just boom, 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 taking advantage of my rocket loadout, my insane rocket loadout where you use Star Spangled Headhunter in the lead. She reduces your ammo consumption and you can shoot your mag forever. It basically 3.6 times your mag size. It's amazing, but these weapons, I've used them and I've paid attention, and the damage is just not there, man. I think they were in A tier. I believe their fire rate and accuracy can make them A tier, not quite S tier, but every time I've used the Cannonade or V6 launcher without a lot of setup, it really let me down. It really let me down. So I'm going to put these in high B tier. That's just kind of how I'm feeling. I don't know. They made me feel bad. I was using my favorite rockets and they were just not doing it. The amount of shots it took to kill smashers was just unacceptable. And we're talking about like totally rocking out here. Double crit damage. We're talking about all the bonuses you could give these things. It's just quite not there. Now, Cannonade is really good for utility. I actually use this for destroying trees and rocks. Pretty awesome. That's pretty cool, but that's not anything that's going to raise its ranking. So I'm going to put these in high B tier for now. Maybe I'll change my mind. Now, the Atomizer might have been S tier. Again, I'm not checking, but the Plasmatic Discharger exists. This weapon, in my opinion, has made the Deatomizer almost entirely obsolete. The Deatomizer does really good crowd damage. It's 35 energy cells a hit, which is a lot. And it used to be best for Storm King end phase. It was never that great for mist monsters and single target damage. Crowd clearing is an expensive reason to use a rocket. There are a lot of cheaper options that do the same job. I don't know. I think this might be controversial, but I really want to put it in C tier. This thing really fell from grace. Now, the reason is not because the weapon got nerfed, but because it's obsolete. There are other weapons that do its job way better. The Plasmatic Discharger has been said by me to be the best weapon in Save the World. That might have been when I was referring to like 3 energy cells. I don't know if I fully agree with that because the best weapon needs to do everything. This weapon takes 3 seconds to charge up and then it shoots an orb of energy that does a ridiculous amount of damage. It is the best smasher killer in the game. Smashers and their form factor, meaning smasher mini bosses, take inordinately more damage from the discharger than normal enemies. If you have a basic skinny husk mini boss, it will take a lot less from the discharger. So it's not like this thing is a true soul mini boss killer, but versus the the Storm King end phase, got it in the end. Between the Storm King end phase and Smasher mini bosses and Smashers, the Discharger is unparalleled. It does not have peers in that category. For 30 energy cells, which you'll note is less than 35. It is 35, right? Look at that expensive 35 heat generation. Generation is basically how much ammo it uses as well. So 35. It's expensive. So it's 30 energy cells instead of 35, and it does way more damage over time. It's similar area of effect damage as well. So for 3 second startup, it is far better than the Deatomizer. It completely knocked it down like 2 tiers. I don't know what else to say. The Discharger's nuts. This weapon deserves to be where it is. And while we're talking about S tier, let's get the obvious ones up here. So I do say weapons that can do it all, or the best in their category. So the pot shot I know you can charge up the Storm King's Wrath to hit crowds of enemies, but that's 60 energy cells. It's not really something you want to do. Pot shot cannot do crowd clearing pretty much whatsoever, but it is so much damage versus a single target, and that goes for the Wrath as well, that it's fine. If you use these weapons to pick off mini bosses, smashers, mist monsters of any kind, you'll be doing great. In fact, in the Storm King fight, it still makes sense to use the Wrath and Pot Shot for crystals or the mini bosses. In fact, even though the Discharger technically kills the mini boss in like less total shots and kind of faster, it takes 3 seconds to charge up, and then it shoots a slow projectile to get where it's going. Pot shot, way quicker. You can double pump it super easy. Does a crap ton of damage. It sometimes bugs to just do double damage. Everybody kind of knows this and has experienced it. So it can hit harder than the Wrath, but the Wrath has kind of a lot more going for it. These are your S tier launchers for sure. Everybody in the community knows this, and there's really no other place for them. Now, Desiblaster, back to the fun ones. Super strong weapon. A tier is kind of competitive. I'm going to put these group damage weapons down here, I guess. I don't really know exactly where they go. Desiblaster is very expensive, but it can bounce up and down if you have a ceiling above you, side to side. With the walls, it can hit the same target many, many times. In my video covering it, again, apologies for the alerts, I showcased it as a weapon that was destroying mini bosses and smashers because it was just one hit, bouncing a bunch of times, annihilating them. Super fun. Dragon's Fury. Oh boy. This weapon is pretty not great. I'll put it in D tier. It shoots a projectile where it lands, and then fireworks happen for a while, and it does damage over time. Lock to fire. So lock to fire is a huge knock when none of these weapons up here are locked to any element other than energy, and the weapons that are locked to energy are there for a reason. The Atomizer used to be there for a good reason. I don't know anymore, but the Fury, it does damage over time. It's not a ton. It is Dragon's Fury, right? I feel like I'm losing. Let's sort by subtype right now and just double check this because it's not a weapon I use that often. It is Dragon's Fury, yes. So it's pretty not great. And I'm actually going to put the other weapon I teased, the Noble Launcher. So I know I teased early on pretending like the Noble Launcher would be way higher. I had a whole feud with Mattio when he and I were talking about it because he made a whole video defending the Noble Launcher, talking about how awesome it is. And I made a whole video angry face like it's not that good. However, if you really helpless weapon. You run totally rocking out wafers and you just give it the best perks. Demolition is penny. It can actually hit for million plus damage. Not millions, but it can hit million like an arc. So it's not unusably bad. All right. It's not unusably bad, but it's it's pretty bad. So it's like low D tier, but it's not an F tier. All right. This is not an honorary F tier position. It's, God, if you like this weapon and you really don't care about energy cells, it'll work. It will kill the enemies in front of you, but I cannot sign off on this weapon. And the more I think about it, the more I feel like I did the deatomizer dirty. Maybe high B tier. It still hits like a truck. I mean, it always has. It didn't get nerfed. I mean, it's not 10 million damage strong, but like, it should not be in C tier. That's too bad. Like below the cannonade, I think I was feeling emotional. I think high B tier is a better place for that. This is a good reason to watch these videos. I think a lot of people can see these. Go down below, comment, just like when I told you the nailer was good. You guys remember that? I had a whole thing in the assault weapons video where I talked about the nailer being amazing, put it in S tier. I had so many comments from people who had leveled up their copy in the middle of watching the video before continuing far enough to watch me lower it. I feel a little bad for that joke, but you guys should definitely watch these videos all the way through. So yeah. Now, the semi-auto launchers here. These are, egg bombs are pretty not great. Snowballs locked to water, so it's only good against fire enemies. It's pretty, I don't know. They're pretty not great. I've tried to use these in videos featuring them, even with the insane rocket loadout. It did okay. It's like a more restricted cannonade. They're not bad. Again, a C tier launcher is still an amazing weapon. It's just not essentially that amazing. And yeah, somebody in chat's commenting on the deatomizer being below the bazooka. I think you haven't used the bazooka in a while. That weapon hits really hard. It's actually very strong, and it's only 3 rockets per shot. Yeah, deatomizer below bazooka, not an accident. It's actually a really good weapon. You should go try the bazooka. Seriously, you'll be shocked. Jackal launcher is basically a fire bazooka. I don't remember if it does more or less damage nowadays, but without checking, I can say that it's locked to fire. So, in fact, we can just compare that real easily. See, we got the launcher sorted here. Let's just look at this. Actually, bazooka versus deatomizer. Look at how much harder the bazooka is hitting. I know the deatomizer hits in a ball and then it explodes into like 16 projectiles, but those projectiles don't necessarily hit the enemy you're aiming at. And I know that I'm probably running damage perks on this as well. I am running double damage, but you can run a crit build on the bazooka as well if you want. Like, it's hitting pretty hard, but the one that I wanted to comment on was the jackal launcher. So if you compare these stats, yeah, it looks like the jackal launcher is hitting a bit harder with weird triple reload perks. Okay, that's not comparable, but it hits harder without the damage perks helping it, but it's also locked to fire. So if you're using this in a nature zone, high A tier, I'm gonna put it in mid A tier because it's a great weapon. It's seasonal, so you can only get it one time a year, but that's most weapons. So locked to fire, I'm gonna keep it where it is. Metal Marauder hits like a truck. This weapon is real strong. I used this recently and it blew me away. In fact, here, if I just do, oh yeah, hang on here, just do metal. Where did I, Metal Marauder? I think I commented right here, deleting smashers. Yeah, I remember it hitting really, really, really hard, and that's well known. I'll put it above here. It's locked to fire and physical, so it's not quite universal, but it's insanely strong and should be respected as such. And yeah, it does a lot of damage. Now the quad launcher, it's a fun weapon. That fire can stack up and do a lot of damage. It's not a bad weapon. I think it's on the upper end of C tier. Locked to fire, I believe it's locked to fire as well. So it's a weapon that is fun to use. You can have a good time with it. As you can see, I did triple reload just screwing around one time. It's not great, but it's really not bad. And the Santa's Little Helper, right below the Metal Marauder. Super good weapon, hits like a truck. It can be any element in the entire game. It is weaker than the Metal Marauder, so depending on the element, it could be better. It has Affliction, though, as well, which is super good. That means you can hit the enemies with one big explosion and then just watch them tick away. You don't have to hit an entire second shot just because they're on 1 HP. That's a huge perk for it. Whether or not it's better or worse, I don't know. It's worse damage, but its utility makes it high A tier. Can't quite be S tier. It's not annihilating smashers or anything, but it's a really, really, really good launcher. Probably the best of the non-S tiers, I think, in my opinion, because it's basically just an upgraded bazooka. The Santa's Little Helper does really well. Now, the Shark Attack is kind of like A tier damage, but bounces around a lot. Really hard to make good use of this. I'll put it in low B tier below the deatomizer. Completely different weapon to the deatomizer, but I remember having fun with this. Again, that was like double crit damage, totally rocking out, having actual fun, not just a practical build, but I don't know. It's fun to use. It'll work, but it's not a mind-blowing amount of damage. And then the Sodbuster also has elemental advantages to it. So if you have these 6 perks that give it 44% extra damage to a certain element, and then you perk it correctly, so if it's doing extra damage to nature and you ran it with a fire copy, this thing will annihilate. It's super strong, get millions of damage with ease. It is very specific to elemental targets, which means it's not as good versus physical. So I'll put it below the other big launchers here, but it's really good. And it can have that quadruple impact. So if that matters to you, you can have that, have some fun with that. Thumper, I'll put it right below Cannonade. I feel like it's a worse Cannonade. I haven't used it too much. That's an opinion that could change. You know, if you ever want to change my opinion, comment down below or hang out on Twitch. Let me know what you're thinking. But yeah, this is the one time I'm going to compare because we're getting close to the end. I put the vacuum tube launcher in S tier. What? Okay. So I'm clearly taking S tier a lot more seriously this time. The vacuum tube launcher is locked to nature and it's crazy expensive. So it is very good. Obviously, I put an S tier last time. I don't think that was a mistake, but being locked to an element and being super expensive is something that's mattering a lot to me right now, and I'm factoring that in pretty heavily. I'll put it in high A tier. If you're willing to spend the amount, it will do the damage, but you're going to pay for it. So I'll put it up here. I'll put it up here. It's a strong weapon that's undeniable, but it's locked to nature. So you're only really using this in water or nature missions. Same element as 67% of the damage, so it's like 8% less than energy. It's really not that big of a deal. I mentioned earlier something was only good versus a certain element. Like if you're using a fire weapon, fire or nature is going to be fine. In this case, nature, you want water or nature. So it's limited, but it's super strong. I'll put it in mid A tier, and we could talk about what... I'm going to turn my fan on because I'm sweating. We're going to talk about what Old Beast was thinking. So... wow, Cannonade and V6 launcher. That's surprising. I must not have used them in a while because now I've brushed up on that and I've refined. Now, I might have put them in S tier in the scope of the entire game. I don't remember exactly what I was thinking at the time, but launchers are all really good. Nothing in this S tier is a bad weapon, but you can see like a lot of the high A tier weapons were in S tier, so I kind of just shifted them down. I like to take S tier seriously, as I've said several times, and then I've also shifted some stuff around based on changes, and of course the Plasmatic Discharger now exists. It is probably the best launcher in the game. Like seriously, it's awesome. So yeah, I think this is a good solid list. Comment down below if you agree or disagree. Comment what you might want to see in the future. Subscribe if you're new. I got videos going out every 3 days. Twitch link down below if you ever want to be here during a recording. Today's an exception, so yeah, Twitch down below for the future. Yeah, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.